Hi, I'm Catherine Littlewood. I work for Disability Sheffield and I also manage Sheffield Voices Learning Disability Project. It was really difficult to kind of pick a subject to talk today to you about because there's so many subjects revolving at the moment around people with disability, particularly the discrimination that people with disabilities have experienced down in COVID. I do have a mental health problem and I'm physically disabled as well. And as Joe rightly said, I'm the author of a book, Cultivating Mad Cow. And I spent the weekend this week having a lovely time with people with disabilities, connecting them on our Valentine's chat through Zoom, making connections and supporting people to feel more wanted and less isolated. And I decided to talk to you today about a situation that actually threw me into a bit of a mental health problem again yesterday after being stable for many years. I took a phone call from my daughter, who's given me permission to talk about this situation today. And she was really upset. And she explained that social services had got involved and a new social worker was around. My grandson's got autism. He's 14 years old and he's called Jack for the purposes of this meeting. And Jack is quite a complex little boy. He's been out of school for 2 years. In fact, he's had 5 schools in all his school life. He's been pushed out of education. He's been put into an inappropriate education facility that wasn't in any way, shape or form equipped to meet his needs. Then he's been shoved into another facility that he couldn't cope with and eventually had to come out of school. And he was out of school for a whole year until he expressed that he wanted to go back into school. Now, having Jack at home is really complicated. He's violent, he swears a lot, his mum's only young, and she copes with being hit and spit at and bitten every single day of the year. She has her house smashed to bits and it's really difficult. And consequently, she's quite depressed. And in the past, she's drunk alcohol quite a bit as well to be able to cope and keep Jack living with her. So yesterday I got this phone call and I was really upset because I believe that we've been doing everything we possibly can as a family to keep Jack safe and out of care. And I rang the social worker. Now, bearing in mind, only 3 weeks ago, the entire roof of my daughter's house fell through and the council refused to fix it because they didn't see it as being an emergency. So I spoke to the social care manager who tells me that they actually want to try and understand why Jack won't go to school and that he feels that he needs to go into child protection because Faye, his mum, isn't doing enough to get Jack back to school. Okay, so I asked him if he'd ever tried to get a child of 14 with autism who's very violent into a school bus to get into school. And he said, well, he'd like to try. So we've got the council roof that's still fallen through. My daughter's incredibly depressed. We've been in this revolving door of services for the last 14 years, which the cost is quite unmeasurable and nothing actually ever changes. There's not been one bit of intervention that's actually helped my family. There's been no overall plan of trying to support my family. And this has been at best containment and at the worst an abuse of power. They've come and they've gone. And over the last 14 years, we've had 22 different social workers. My grandson's had 10 PAs and none of them are still around. No one spends any time really getting to grips and understanding what the problem is. The social care seem to jump into action to initiate child protection when they really don't know how to handle anything else. They don't seem to have any other mechanism at their hand for supporting parents. Nothing ever changes. So I asked the manager yesterday, so if you go to child protection, through child protection procedures, what is that going to change? What are you going to give? And he said, well, we'll get more support. So I said, well, why don't you just give us more support? Why don't you give the family more support now? And he said, well, we have to go through child protection in order to access and unlock that support. So 3 years ago, we made a CAMHS referral again. They refused to see my grandson. That's been going on now for 3 years, refusing to come out to the house. My grandson set fire to the house 4 times. Social services think that there is something really badly, seriously wrong with my grandson because he's communicating in this way that he's a very unhappy child. So let's talk about cost. Talking about cost is quite a slippery concept. So a family that's got really complex disability needs probably costs this government round about £250,000 that's spent on families, but not one single penny of that money goes to that child or that family. The cost it seems to be this ridiculous gyroscope that continues to spin around families like ours, where nothing ever changes, nothing moves on, but yet the social workers still get paid, despite how incapable and how irresponsible and inappropriate they are. So, number one lie, we're going to get more support for you. How come that we are stuck in this situation 14 years later with another person telling us that they're going to give us more support? I find it quite discriminative. You know, I was a social worker. In fact, I'm quite ashamed to be associated with the entire profession because it's not just my family. I've actually never seen anybody, any family or any person I work with ever have anything good to say about this system. And we looked at a book when I was a social worker called Beyond Blame, looking at how women, how single parents get blamed for things. And I think what is happening at the moment in my family is discrimination. Nobody's understanding this. Nobody's wanting to give time to properly listen. They know best. Of course they know best. There's no building of relationships. And when I question the fact that this is really bad practice and the fact that after my daughter's been honest with them about her depression, they've instigated child protection procedures. And how on earth is that a good way to build a relationship with anybody? The system is set up and designed not for the people that it supports. It's set up for the people that actually work in it. You know, and these people continually coming out into families like ours just compound the situation. They penalise and they compound the stresses that we're already dealing with. I'm sitting on 18 complaints that I've made since my little grandson was a baby to this department, Sheffield Social Care. And yet nothing has changed, nothing. He sits in his bedroom, suicidal and depressed. And while his mom is trying to cope and being told that she's not a very good parent, he's been abused by this system. We've been abused by this system. Jack has been blamed at school for not fitting in. And, you know, Ella's been blamed as a parent for not being able to care for him. You know, when we talk about people with learning disabilities, 80% of all resources are spent with social workers trying to keep people out of the system. 1 in 6 people that end with a learning disability enter care proceedings, and 75% of those families have their children removed from them. The threshold is so high for parents with learning disabilities and people that are caring for children. We have few places to turn to. And I want to say, why don't we just get rid of social care and have advocates? It's not about gatekeeping. This is our right to have a service. I just want to tell you that my daughter last night sent me a text to say she wanted to go and get a bottle of gin because she felt so distressed. I went out and got a piece of cake. I think social services owe us money for 10,000 cups of tea that we've provided over the past few years. Thank you.